True peace kens the all-seeing eye. Apple just declared war on your privacy. Say, man, I did this video yesterday, but they wouldn't let me upload it. So let's see what's going on. Wouldn't show no visuals at all. Man, Peter Slang. Under his eye, she says the right farewell. Under his eye, I reply, and she gives a nod. This article is from Edward Snowden, man. Peter Slang. By now, y'all probably heard that Apple plans to push a new and uniquely intrusive surveillance system out to many of the more than 1 billion iPhones it has sold, which all run the behemoth proprietary take it or leave it software. This new offensive is tentatively slated to begin with the launch of iOS 15, almost certainly in mid-September, with the devices of its U.S. users base designated as the initial targets. We're told that other countries will be spared, but not for long. Peep the slang. You might have noticed that I haven't mentioned which problems it is that Apple is purporting to solve. Why? Because it doesn't matter. Having read thousands upon thousands of remarks on this growing scandal, it has become clear to me that many understand it doesn't matter, but few, if any, have been willing to actually say it, speak it candidly, if that's still allowed. That's the way it always goes when someone of institutional significance launches a campaign to defend an indefensible intrusion into our private spaces. They make a dash to the supported high ground from which they speak in low, solemn tones about their moral mission before verbally invoking the dread specter of the four horsemen of infopocalypse, warning that only a dubious amulet or a suspicious software update can save us from the threatening members of our species. Man, peep the slang. Suddenly, everybody with a principled objection is forced to preface their concerns with apologetic throat clearing and the establishment of bona fides. I lost a friend when the towers came down. However, as a parent, I understand this is a real problem. But as a parent, I'm here to tell you that sometimes it doesn't matter why the man in the handsome suit is doing something. What matters are the consequences. Apple's new system, regardless of how anyone tries to justify it, will permanently redefine what belongs to you and what belongs to them. You asking how? The task Apple intends its new surveillance system to perform, preventing their cloud systems from being used to store digital contraband. In this case, unlawful images uploaded by their customers is traditionally performed by searching their systems. While it is still problematic for anybody to search through a billion people's private files, the fact that they can only see the files you gave them is a crucial limitation. Now, however, that all sets to change. Under the new design, your phone will now perform these searches on Apple's behalf before your phone photos, have even reached their iCloud servers. And yada yada. If enough forbidden content is discovered, law enforcement will be notified. Man, peep the slang. If enough forbidden content is discovered, law enforcement will be notified. What happens on your phone stays on your phone. Peep the slang. I intentionally wave away the technical and procedural details of Apple systems here, some of which are quite clever because they, like our man in a handsome suit, merely distract from the most pressing fact, the fact that in just a few weeks, Apple plans to erase the boundary dividing which devices work for you and which devices work for them. Why is this so important? Once the precedent has been set that it is fit and proper for even a pro-privacy company like Apple to make products that betray their users and owners, Apple itself will lose all control over how that precedent is applied. As soon as the public first came to learn of the spy phone plan, experts began investigating its technical weaknesses and the many ways it could be abused, primarily within the perimeters of Apple design. Although these valid vulnerability research efforts had produced compelling evidence that the system is seriously flawed, they also seriously missed the point. Apple gets to decide whether or not their phones will monitor their owners' infractions for the government, but it's the government that gets to decide what constitutes an infraction and how to handle it. And peep the slang. For its parts, Apple say their system in its initial V1.0 design has a narrow focus. It only scrutinizes photos intended to be uploaded to iCloud, although for 85% of its customers, that means every photo, and it does not scrutinize them beyond a simple comparison against a database of specific example of previously identified child sexual abuse material, CSAM. If you're an enterprise pedophile with a basement full of CSAM tainted iPhones, Apple welcomes you to entirely exempt yourself from these scans by simply flipping the Disable iCloud Photos switch, a bypass which reveals that this system was never designed to protect children, as they would have you believe, but rather to protect their brand as long as you keep the material off their servers and so keep Apple out of the headline. Apple doesn't care. So what happens when in a few years after latest a politician points that out and in order to protect their children bills are passed in the legislature to prohibit this disable bypass, effectively compelling Apple to scan photos that aren't backed up to iCloud? What happens when a party in India demands that they start scanning for memes associated with a separatist movement? What happens when the UK demands they scan for a liberty of terrorist imagery? How long do we have left before the iPhone in your pocket begins quietly filing reports about encountering extremist political material, or about your presence at a civil disturbance, or simply about your iPhone possessing a video clip that contains or maybe not contain a blurry image of a passerby who resembles, according to an algorithm, a person of interest? Man, people slang. Ain't this good? If Apple demonstrates the capabilities and willingness to continuously remotely search every phone for evidence of one particular type of crime, these are questions for which they will have no answer, and yet an answer will come, and it will come from the worst lawmakers of the worst governments. Peter Slang, this is not a slippery slope, it's a cliff. One particular frustration for me is that I know some people at Apple, and I even like some people at Apple, bright, principled people who should know better, actually who do know better. Every security expert in the world is screaming themselves hoarse now, imploring Apple to stop. Even the experts who in more normal circumstances reliably argue in favor of censorship. Even some survivors of child exploitation are against it. And yet, as the OG designer Galileo once said, it moves. Faced with a blistering torrent of global condemnation, Apple has responded not by addressing any concerns or making any changes, or more sensibly, by just scraping the plan altogether, but by deploying their man in the handsome suit software chief who resembles the well-moistured villain from a movie about Wall Street. To give quotes to, yes, the Wall Street Journal about how sorry the company is for the confusion it has caused, but how the public shouldn't worry. Apple feels very good about what they're doing, man. Peep the slang. Neither the message nor the messenger was a mistake. Apple dispatched its SVP for software, Ken Dahl, to speak with the journal, not to protect the company users, but to reassure the company investor. His role was to create the false impression that this is not something that you or anyone should be upset about, and collaterally, his role was to ensure this new policy would be associated with the face of an Apple executive other than CEO Tim Cook, just in case the rollout or the fallout results in a corporate beheading. Why? Why is Apple risking so much for a CSAM detection system that has been denounced as dangerous and easily repurposed for surveillance and censorship by the very computer scientists who've already put it to the test? What could be worth the decisive shattering of the foundational Apple idea that an iPhone belongs to the person who carries it rather than to the company that made it? Apple designed in California, assembled in China, purchased by you, owned by us. The one answer to these questions that the optimists keep coming back is to the likelihood that Apple is doing this as a prelude to finally switching over to end-to-end encryption for everything its customers store on iCloud, something Apple had previously intended to do before backtracking in a dismaying display of cowardice after the FBI secretly complained. For the unfamiliar, what I'm describing here as an end-to-end encryption is a somewhat complex concept, but briefly it means that only the two endpoints sharing a file, say two phones on the opposite side of the internet, are able to decrypt it, even if the file were being stored and served from an iCloud server. In Cupertino, as far as Apple or any other middleman in a handsome suit is concerned, that file is just an indecipherable blob of random garbage. The file only becomes a text message, a video, a photo, or whatever it is, when it is paired with a key that's possessed only by you and by those with whom you choose to share it with. Peep the slang. This is the goal of end-to-end encryption, drawing a new and ineradicable line in the digital and dividing your data and their data. It allows you to trust a service provider to store your data without granting them any ability to understand it. This would mean that even Apple itself could no longer be expected to rummage through your iCloud account with its grabby little raccoon hands, and therefore could not be expected to hand it over to any government that can stamp a sheet of paper, which is precisely why the FBI again secretly campaigned. For Apple to realize this original vision would have represented a huge improvement in the privacy of all devices, effectively delivering the final word in a 30-year-long debate over establishing a new industry standard, and by extension, the new global expectation that parties seeking access to data from a device must obtain it from that device rather than turning the internet and its ecosystem into a spy machine. Unfortunately, I am to report that once again the optimists were wrong. Apple's proposal to make their phones inform on and betray their owner remarks the dawn of a dark future, one to be written in the blood of the political opposition of 100 countries, that will exploit this system to the hilt. See, the day after this system goes live, it will no longer matter whether or not Apple ever enables end-to-end encryption, because our iPhones will be reporting their contents before our keys are even used. Man, peep the slang. I can't think of any other company that has so proudly and so publicly distributed spyware to its own devices, and I can't think of a threat more dangerous to a product's security than the mischief of its own maker. There is no fundamental technological limit to how far the precedent Apple is establishing can be pushed, meaning the only restraint is Apple is all too flexible company policy, something governments understand all too well. I would say there should be a law, but I fear it would only make things worse. We are bearing witness to the construction of an all-seeing eye, an eye of improvidence, under whose aegis every iPhone will search itself for whatever Apple wants, or for whatever Apple is directed to want. They are inventing a world in which every product you purchase owes its highest loyalty to someone other than its owner. To put it bluntly, this is not an innovation but a tragedy, a disaster in the making. Or maybe I'm confused, or maybe I just think different. Man, peep the slang.